Just to add a little bit to what Bill just said, what he's talking about is teamwork. That's what it's all about. Someone mentioned earlier about how during the Depression, the big bands, Bill was talking about that, how the big bands traveled all over the country. A lot of times they would cross paths with the Wrens, and of course they stayed in the same rooming houses because black groups could not stay in the established hotels, and there were a lot of black rooming houses in many of the cities that they traveled in. So it was not uncommon for the Wrens to run into the Count Basie band in Cincinnati or Indianapolis or someplace because they stayed at the same places. And that common link was very evident in both the music and the sport as it was played.
What really stood out to me was what you said about being able to really be with Martin Luther King Jr. and able to ask him even just one question when you're only 17. And I was wondering if you really, how you felt about that when you were that age and how you were reflecting on it now.
For me to have the opportunity to ask Dr. King a question was extraordinary because I was 17 years old. I'm with all these adults who are professional journalists, and here I am. I'm below the level of rookie. I'm a wannabe out here. I get to ask Dr. King a question about the program that we were taking part in. I asked him if he thought it was a success, and he said that the program was already a success because the kids in Harlem that were involved in the program were already thinking about how to make Harlem a better place. And this happened maybe halfway through the summer. So just having that opportunity to interact with some historical figure like that, within 4 years he had been assassinated, and it was something that stayed with me as I went through my adult life. He was assassinated when I was 21 years old, and to be able to think back that he touched my life and his example of how to deal with the issues that Black Americans had to deal with in a way that achieved what they wanted to do without becoming violent or bitter really has stayed with me and enabled me to live my life in a much more effective way. So I'm very thankful for that happening. And again, it's talk about lucky stars. I've had a lot of them over my head. But in my household, jazz was always on the turntable. Back there when they had vinyl records, a lot of people, your age don't know about that. Jazz is always on the turntable. My mom liked Sarah Vaughan and Nat King Cole. My dad liked Count Basie and Duke Ellington. So some of those people were always on the turntable. It was just the background of our daily life. So it really, I had no choice. Bill's a big band guy. I'm a bebopper. I'm more than Charlie Parker and Thelonious, but all from the same roots.
And then my second question is, how do you think the youth nowadays is affected by parents who don't want to put their kids in sports and how they don't socialize very often in a team effort, and they would rather have their kids in unactive sports like that, like say golf, and they don't have a team that they can be with and actually be accepted and understand how to be as a team?
Well, I think the whole concept of teamwork is something that is part of growing up. In your generation, if you want to connect with your friends, you go online. In my generation, when I wanted to connect with my friends, I had to go to the park. There was no other way. I couldn't call them. If I wanted to see them, I had to go to the park and we'd play stickball or something like that, touch football. Yeah. And those kind of team sports like I mentioned earlier, sports bring you together, and you learn how to know and work with the people that you deal with. So I think that is progress. Sometimes is not always progress. This whole information
got away. It was really amazing with 45 seconds of footage and probably, what, 24 at the most photographs of the Wrens to try to build a story. And so what we had to do is we had to go back, talk about the foundation being Harlem. Deborah, with her great eye for graphics, helped put together wonderful graphics that really sustain the story, because really, if you watch the movie again, which I hope you do on Netflix, there's very little, and everything has to be done via graphics, and one way or the other, we put the story together, we built it by first talking about Harlem, then talking about the Wrens, Bob Douglas, then talking about the competition between the Wrens and the Celtics, then the Wrens and the Globetrotters, and finally the championship, and then an epilogue. But it was really anxiety-inducing. So I'm glad it turned out.
Yeah, for me, it was like, we couldn't get any 1930s pictures of the Globetrotters, so I had to come up with that whole animation sequence. And I would talk to some of the old Globetrotters, and they would tell us some of these stories, but I couldn't have any photos because there was so much more I wanted to put in there about the rivalry between the Globetrotters and the Wrens. There was this duality going on in Black America at that time that I really wanted to get into, but there wasn't the imagery and stuff to do it. And it was about different tones of skin being black, some light-skinned blacks, darker-skinned blacks, and how they were, being accepted. And I was learning at the same time about the migration coming in from the West Indies to Harlem and to Chicago. And I was learning about all the prejudices that they were facing. And I wanted to have, more stories about that. I wanted to have more stories about Mr. Hearst. He owned that newspaper. I really wanted to get into, why would this guy hold this tournament when nobody else would? And I wanted to tell his story. I wanted to tell more about Bob Douglas becoming the father of black basketball. But we were so challenged to find imagery. We had to dream a lot of that stuff up to create that with Justin Bullis artwork, or taking photographs and making them into multi-dimensional pictures to entertain you. So I think there was a lot more, but going forward, what our goal is to tell more stories about forgotten heroes. And we're going to be looking for even more creative ways, I think, because there's no footage and there's no photos of these stories. So we're going to be recreating them from our minds.
For me, the one thing that I wanted to have in the film was a little bit about one of my favorite characters from the Harlem Renaissance. His name was Fats Waller, and he was just an incredible guy. He was funny. He was a brilliant pianist, and he was just a figure in the community. He was born in Harlem about 1920 or in the teens, and unfortunately he died like the second 1942, I think he died. But there was one photo of him eating hot dogs in Harlem. Fats was 5'11" and he weighed 320 pounds. And there was all these great stories. The one story I enjoyed the most was he was playing in Chicago, and he noticed some guys in long coats in the room where he was playing, and he was getting rave reviews for his performance in Chicago. And between sets, these guys came and said, they pulled guns out on him and said, "You're coming with us." And he was like, "What?" So they took him down to the south side of Chicago to Al Capone's hotel. The one that you couldn't get into the front door, you couldn't get in. They put him in there, and it was Al's birthday. Al was a big fan of George Gershwin, and Fats played George Gershwin's. He knew George Gershwin personally and knew all of his music. So they kept him as prisoner for a day and a half. And, he played, and periodically they would come and he thought they were frisking him or something. Finally, they let him go. He went back to his hotel, he packed his bags, he didn't even change his clothes, he packed his bags, went to the train station, got on the first train back to New York, right? He finally gets home to New York and he tells his wife, geez, I got captured by gangsters. And they had me play, they wouldn't let me go. And she went through a suit and he had about $4,000 or $5,000. They're putting money, they were paying him, but it was just their style that they really didn't appreciate. I really wanted to, get into all of that, but it was a diversion. One other thing that I'm sure especially the older people here will appreciate. Cab Calloway in 1928 tried out for and made the Harlem Globetrotters. And he had to decide at that point if he was going to play for the Globetrotters as a professional basketball player or sing for his sister's band. So he made the right choice. He was a lifelong basketball fan, and I love him. When we would play in Oakland, sometimes he'd come and sing the national anthem, and he'd come and just say hi to us after the game. Wonderful guy, and I just want to share it with you. From start to finish, about 4 years. I thought it was like trying to move a glacier. I'm sure that Anna and Deborah have some really good horror stories to tell you about it, because I did my thing, but they had to do the trench work. Deborah had to deal with contracts, business. Anna had to do with getting the script right, and so many things. So I'll let them.
Well, one of the biggest problems was I think we had a lot of false starts. I think Deborah was on this project, Deborah and Kareem, about 2 years before I came on. And they had a few false starts. There are a lot of people who, in this business, who say they can do things they can't do. And so it was a learning curve, to say the least.
It's like, you meet people that sound qualified, that come highly referred, and they weren't. So Anna and I we worked like 16 hours a day on this thing for the last year trying to get it, and then all I can say is thank goodness we found Bill Cunliffe too, because while she was figuring out how to put everything in order and not make it wall-to-wall talking heads, so it wasn't boring, we're like, this thing needs some sound. And we're doing all this without sound, and we found Bill. It was like a miracle that we found Bill. And he really just, you guys heard it. He made it come to life, and I just want to say that we have a soundtrack outside if you want to get one. It's got 63 minutes of original music on it.